friends. So what we're doing in this last clip for this week is talking about Chisholm's paper on human freedom in the self. So the reason why I include this paper as part of our presentation of the package view is because Chisholm uses this phrase, which I think really nicely captures the view of free will that's embodied in the package view that we get in Plato and in Descartes. So Chisholm describes us as being like unmoved movers, right? So the reason this resonates so well or so nicely with the view of Descartes is that you'll recall that Descartes, in the fourth meditation, says that our will is the most godlike power that we have, right? And if you've at all read philosophy prior to this class, you might remember that Aristotle describes God as an unmoved mover, right? And St. Thomas Aquinas picks up on this theme and describes God as an unmoved mover. So what Chisholm gives us is a well-developed view in which human agents are seen as unmoved movers, right? We're free in the sense that there's nothing compelling us to act in a certain way. So Chisholm develops this by distinguishing two types of causes. There's what he calls imminent cause and a transient cause. So what's the difference between an imminent cause and a transient cause? Well, an imminent cause, a transient cause is where one event causes another event. So, for example, lightning strikes a tree, the tree ignites. Right? The lightning striking the tree and the tree igniting is an example of a transient cause. Right? There's this event, the lightning striking the tree, and there's a second event, the tree igniting. Right? So it's one event causing another event. That's transient cause. The other kind of a cause is an imminent cause. Now, an imminent cause is when an agent causes something. Just a quick word about terminology here. An agent simply means one who acts. So I'm an agent, you're an agent, people you run into on the street are agents, puppies, not agents, babies, not agents, Obama, agent, Biden, agent. So an imminent cause is when an agent causes something to happen. So for example, if you have a torch and you chuck that torch onto the tree and the tree ignites, then the tree's igniting is a result of your action. That is to say that it's the product of an imminent cause, right? That's an instance of imminent causation. So again, transient causation is when one event causes another event. Imminent causation is when an agent causes an event. So we have these two ways of thinking about causal relationships. So the big question then is, why buy into this distinction? Why think that transient causes really are distinct from imminent causes? Well, really, it's captured in the way that we think about situations, right? So for example, I pick up this cup of water and I take a sip. Right? So when we do that, we say Lassiter takes a sip of coffee, or takes a sip of water. But we can also understand that situation in another way, right? My brain does certain things which, my brain engages in certain kinds of activity, which enervates my muscles, which causes my hand to do this, pick up the water, bring it to my mouth, and take a sip. So the first case, where we say Lassiter drinks the water, that is a case of imminent causation, right? So Lassiter's wanting the water causes the water to be consumed by Lassiter. But when we describe the event in terms of my brain performing certain actions, enervating my muscles, causing my arm to do this, and this, and this. Well, that's a case of transient causation, right? Neural events cause muscle events, which cause further muscle events, which cause further muscle events. Right? All of this, and all of this, neural stuff sort of happening in between all of that. So, we have the two events, right? Or the two ways of describing the situation. One, Lassiter's desire causes him to drink the water. And two, Lassiter's brain, the brain up in here, does a bunch of stuff which causes water to go in here. Now, if those were the same thing, that is to say, if there were no difference between imminent and transient causation, then those would simply be different, they'd be the same thing, they'd be different descriptions of the very same event, but there would be no difference between these two things, right? Any difference would be in name only. But intuitively, we regard these as different kinds of causes, right? So, for example, we often recognize that problems in neurochemistry, or sort of imbalances in neurochemistry, can cause changes in behavior. So, we recognize that events caused by activity in the brain are of a different sort than activity engaged in by agents. So again, if we thought of these as the same, then really there would be different descriptions of the same thing. But intuitively, we just find these to be different kinds of causes, right? Lassiter picking up the cup is different from the brain, it's a different kind of cause from the brain innervating the muscles, causing this action to happen. So the best explanation for this intuitive difference, according to Chisholm, is that in the first case, Lassiter does something, but in the second case, when we describe all the brain activity, that's not true in that case. Right? Lassiter doesn't show up in that second description. Right? Lassiter shows up in the first description, right, where we say Lassiter takes a sip of water. But Lassiter doesn't show up in the second description, where we simply talk about neural activity. So, that's one reason to think that transient and imminent causation are distinct types of causation. Right? That imminent causes are different from transient causes. Another reason is in terms of how we understand the concept of transient causation. So, Chisholm argues that imminent causes are prior to transient causes. That is, we have an understanding of our own agency prior to having an understanding of other sorts of causes. So before we can understand how the lightning can cause the tree to ignite, we first have to understand facts about ourselves as causal forces. So, our grasp of imminent causation is prior in time to our grasp of transient causation. And for us to make sense of that, we have to regard imminent and transient causation as different things. Again, our understanding of imminent causation comes first. Our understanding of transient causation comes second. We couldn't have our understanding of transient causation without our understanding of imminent causation. But in order for transient causation to be parasitic on imminent causation, they first have to be different things. So where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us with human beings being a special kind of cause, right? We're not just one sort of causal thingy among other kinds of causal thingies, right? Agents are special kinds of causes. What are we? We are unmoved movers, right? We can initiate change in the world, but we ourselves are not the product of other causal forces in the world. So when I pick up my glass to take a sip of water, I don't do that because, because of evolution, or because of the Big Bang, or because of God. I do it because, well, I wanted water, right? There's nothing more to it than that. So I freely chose to drink my water. So that's just a quick summary of Chisholm. There's more there. If you get a chance, I encourage you to take a look at it, especially his distinction between inclination and necessitation. But what I want to do now is I want to bring together what we've talked about over the last few days and bring it together for the package view that we're going to be criticizing for the next few weeks of the term. So again, remember this package view of human nature that I introduced at the start of the week, right? That human beings have disembodied minds, that human beings are rational, that human beings are free, and that human beings are asocial / agendered. After having read Plato and Descartes and Chisholm, we can start to flesh out this picture a little bit more. So let's do that. So what does it mean to say that human beings have disembodied minds? Well, it means that Descartes' substance dualism is right? That to have a mind, right, to think, doesn't require anything bodily, right? That to understand how minds work, we don't have to understand anything interesting about bodies. Why is that? Well, because you as a mental substance are distinct from your body. So that's the first bit, right? How humans have disembodied minds. How do we have disembodied minds? Cartesian dual, right? Descartes' substance dualism. Second, we said human beings are rational. So where do we find that? Well, think back to the fourth meditation for Descartes. So Descartes says that when we judge, it's the will affirming or denying or withholding judgment from information from the intellect. So when we judge, we are judging on the basis of deliverances of the intellect, right? Not emotion, not the appetites, intellect. So human beings are really fundamentally rational. I mean, there's other stuff there, right? Of course we have emotions, of course we have appetites, but that's not what's most important about us. That's not what's special about us. What's special about us is that we are rational. The third point, we are free. So what does it mean to be free? Well, here we go to Chisholm, right? So we are free in the sense that we are unmoved movers, right? That we are immanent causes. We are a kind of causal force different from everything else in reality, right? So gravity causes water to go into my cup. But I'm the one pouring the bottle, right? As soon as you position the bottle in the right way, the water will in fact come out. But what causes the bottle to be positioned in that way? Me, right? I am the immanent cause of the bottles being positioned in a certain way. That is to say that I, as an immanent cause, am different from other things in the world as transient causes. So the way we're going to cash that out is to say that human beings are free. We are unmoved movers. The final point is that we are asocial / agendered. So what I mean by this is that when we're understanding what it is to be a human being, the fact that we are social creatures, or the fact that we have genders of a certain sort, is completely off the radar. Right? So, again, think back to Descartes, think back to Plato, think back to Chisholm. In the view we find there, in the view that gets developed there of what it is to be human, never once do we have mentioned that we live in communities, that we have families, that we have friends, that we have a language we use to communicate with other human beings, that very rarely are we alone for exceptionally long stretches of time. In fact, one of our harshest punishments is to put people by themselves, right? The fact that isolation is a form of punishment, right? these things aren't mentioned by Plato, by Descartes, or by Chisholm. So the way I want to read that is to say that there's a conspicuous absence of social concepts in understanding what it is to be a human being. And so that's not to say that we are antisocial. It is to say that we are asocial on the package view. That to understand what it is to be a human being doesn't require thinking about ourselves in social terms, right? We don't need to think about ourselves as community members, as being language users, or rather, as being sort of social language users, as being bearers of culture, as having families, as having friends. None of this stuff is essential for what it is to be a human being. To be human is to have a disembodied mind, is to be rational, is to be free. That's the view of human nature we get on the package view. And what we're going to spend the next 4 weeks doing is criticizing that package view.